Morning and welcome to your 7 a.m. gentle yoga class. We're going to start in an easy seated pose. So you can be crisscross applesauce, or you can have your hips up on a block or a blanket if you want, whatever is comfortable to you. And we'll start with some neck stretches. Reach your fingertips out towards your sides and down towards the mat. And then drop your right ear to your right shoulder. And try to relax the shoulders down away from both ears. Let your head float back up to center and drop your left ear to your left shoulder. And come back up to center. Take a few shoulder rolls. You can roll your shoulders back and roll them forward. And then shrug your shoulders up to your ears and release. Scrunch them up really tight. And then let them drop down and back. Now we'll take a little side stretch. Inhale your arms up overhead. Exhale, release over to the right side. And draw your left shoulder back so that you can open up the chest fully to the front of the room. Use your right fingertips for support, but don't let the right side of your body completely collapse and get crunchy. Inhale both arms up overhead. Exhale, reach over to the left side. Come back up to center and release the arms down to the sides. And we'll take a very gentle, easy twist, just beginning to remind the spine that that's one of the directions it can move. So place your right fingertips behind you, directly behind you, and bring your left hand to your right knee. Sit up nice and tall and start to gaze over your right shoulder. As you inhale, think about sitting nice and tall and almost like there's an invisible string connected to the top of your head and it's drawing you upwards. And as you exhale, relax. And as you relax, maybe you twist a little bit farther. And focus on the way that this pose feels for you. If it feels like you're forcing the twist and wrenching your spine, bring your focus back to elongating the spine. And now letting the twist come naturally with each breath. Take one more full breath here. Inhaling to lengthen, exhaling to twist, and then slowly return to center and switch sides. Your left fingertips come behind you. Your arm acts as a second spine to help you sit up nice and tall as your right hand comes to your left knee. And start to look over your left shoulder this time. Inhale to lengthen. Exhale to relax, possibly farther into the twist. And return to center. And we'll move into child's pose. For child's pose, your knees come wide to the edges of your mat. Big toes come to touch. Sit back on your heels and then reach your hands forward, letting your chest melt down towards the ground. Maybe your forehead comes to the ground, or maybe you rest your forehead on a rolled up blanket or a towel or a yoga block. That way, if you want to support your head and neck without bringing your forehead all the way down to the mat, you can. And while you're in child's pose, take this time to bring your attention to your breath. You don't have to force a change, but notice if your breath is fast or if it's slow, if you're filling your lungs completely and exhaling completely, or if you're keeping those breaths short and shallow. Sometimes just bringing awareness to the breath can bring an evenness and an easiness to it, but don't feel like you have to change anything. And from your child's pose, you're going to stay low, heart melting towards the ground. But if you have a block or a blanket supporting your forehead, you can move it out of your way. And we're going to walk our hands over to the right side. So we're taking a different type of side stretch here. And keep breathing. One more breath here. And then walk your hands back through center and over to the left side. Walk your hands back to center one last time. And then slowly rise up, bringing your hands under your shoulders. Shift weight into your hands, and then stack your shoulders over wrists and your hips over your knees for tabletop position. And in tabletop, we'll take a few cat-cows. So as you inhale, drop your belly, lift your tailbone, pull your shoulders back away from your ears. So it's really easy in cow pose to get your shoulders up by your ears, but you want to draw them back, draw them together as you bring your gaze up a little bit. And then exhale, round your spine, release your head and neck so they're relaxed. And then inhale to cow. You're connecting your breath to your movement. Exhale, cat. Pushing your heart up towards the ceiling through your back. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. And one more. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. And take whatever other organic movements feel good here. You might want to hinge back and forth, shifting weight back into your knees and then forward into your hands. You might want to snake side to side a little bit if that feels good. And from tabletop, we're going to take a little bit of a balance, working on core strength, working on balance. But you want to make sure that your hands are firmly planted in the mat. So spread your fingers wide, suction cup them to the mat like starfish. Press each of your knuckles into the mat. And then from here, shift weight into your left hand so that you can start to lift the right. If you can, lift your bicep up by your ear. And then if you're feeling pretty good, if you're feeling pretty stable right here, with that right arm lifted, you can start to lift your left leg straight out behind you. So you want to kick it. Well, I don't have room here. You're going to kick it out straight behind you, foot flexed, strong, keeping your hips level. That's the tricky part, is keeping your hips level. And it might help to pick a point on the ground slightly in front of you to focus on, a point that doesn't move. I also will tuck my toes of my right foot. That might help stabilize you. And suck your belly button into your spine. Engage the core to help with that balance aspect. And then set your right hand down, bring your right knee back, your left knee back in, and then shake out what you need to shake out. before we do the other side. So plant your hands on the mat again, starfish hands. Shift weight into your right palm. If this is really hard on your wrists, you can also make a fist and put this part of your fist straight down on the ground. If you're stacking your shoulder over your elbow, over your wrist, then you're still going to be fully and safely supported. So that's an option. Shift your weight into your right palm or wrist or fist. Lift your left arm out in front of you. Once you feel stable here, reach your right toes back. Strong, straight leg, foot flexed so that your toes are pointing down towards the mat. Suck in your belly button, engage that core. And see if you can continue sending energy forwards through your left hand and back towards your right foot. And then bring your hand and your foot back down to the ground. Shake it out a little, maybe shake out your hands. And when you're ready, come back to tabletop. We'll move into our first down dog of the day. So from here, you can move your hands one handprint forward on the mat, so you've got some extra space. Tuck your toes, lift your knees, lift your hips, and pedal out your down dog. So start by straightening one leg and then the other. If your hamstrings are really, really tight, you might want to spend a little bit of time doing this. And then once you've pedaled out your down dog a little bit, bend your knees as much as you need to so that you can press your heart towards your thighs so that you're creating a long line from your wrists through your elbows, your shoulders, all the way to your hips. So it's more important that the top half of your body be straight than your legs. And take a moment to breathe here. And then gaze forward towards the spot on your mat between your hands and start to tiptoe, baby step your feet forward until they come all the way between your hands. We're going to come into a forward fold. You can have your hands your feet hip width apart, which is 2 fist widths apart. Or if you feel more stable, you can have your big toes touching and your heels slightly apart. Let the top half of your body completely relax. Relax your head and your neck. You can sway your arms side to side. And you can shake your head yes. Shake your head no. Shake your head yes again. So that you know you're not holding tension in your neck. And start to slowly roll up through the spine. We're going to come to standing, but we're going to do it very slowly, very intentionally. Start to engage your core just a little bit, ever so slightly. That way you're thinking in terms of supporting the spine as you roll up. And you're stacking one vertebra on top of the last. Letting your head and neck stay relaxed until they're the very last things to come up. And then shine your palms forward. This will draw your shoulders back and down. So your shoulder blades just glide down and set where they're supposed to be. And take a moment in your mountain pose to root down through your feet. Find that stance that feels best for you. And shift your weight forward into the balls of the feet, back into the heels. Maybe you do that a few times until you find that sweet spot right between where you feel totally stable. You can even play around with picking your toes up off the mat, spreading them wide. If you really want a challenge, you can try setting your toes down one at a time. And then make sure you've got a little bit of a micro bend in the knees so that you're not locking your knees, but you still feel firmly planted, rooted, strong on your feet. Inhale your arms up overhead for extended mountain. And exhale, forward fold, bringing your hands through heart center. Lead with your chest as you fold over your legs. This time we're coming to a halfway lift, so you can bring your hands to your shins or your thighs. Squeeze your shoulder blades back and together so that you have a flat back. Your gaze is down at the mat so that your neck stays long and neutral, that you're making the shape of the number 7 with your body. And exhale, forward fold. Inhale, big move, because we're going to sweep our hands up and overhead to extended mountain again. And exhale, forward fold. This time, plant the hands on the mat, starfish hands. Step one foot back, all the way to the back of your mat. Step the other foot back, and we're coming into a high plank. So you're in a high push-up position. You can always do this on your knees because either way, the top half of your body is doing the same amount of work. Your core is still engaged. And slowly lower down all the way to the mat. Squeeze your elbows into your rib cage as you lower down completely to the floor. And without pressing a lot of weight in your hands, inhale, peel your chest up off the mat just slightly, coming to low cobra. Exhale, release all the way down to the mat. Inhale, cobra again. Release. And one more time. Inhale up to cobra. And then come back down. Press weight into your hands so that you can push yourself back to tabletop. And from here, tuck your toes, lift your knees, lift your hips, come into a downward dog. Inhale, gaze forward to the spot between your hands. Step or walk your feet between your hands and come to that forward fold. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, forward fold. Inhale, sweep your arms up overhead. Exhale, forward fold. Plant your hands on the mat. Step one foot back and then the other, come into a high plank. This time, we're coming down halfway. So instead of belly to the mat, you're coming so that your rib cage is right about your elbows. Flip your feet so the tops of your feet are on the mat. Come on up to upward facing dog. And then press yourself back to downward facing dog. From your down dog, gaze forward to the spot between your mat. Lift up your right leg behind you and swing it through. When you set down your foot, if it doesn't come between your hands, you can pick it up and scoot it forward. But you want to make sure that your knee is stacked over your ankle. And you always have the option to set down that back knee because we're going to come up to a crescent or a kneeling crescent. So if you want to keep that knee lifted, then press energy through the heel, but keep the heel lifted. If you want to set down that knee, get your balance, and rise on up to crescent. Arms up overhead. And bring your hands to heart center. And from here, we're going to take a revolved crescent. So leading with your heart, you're going to hinge forward and then bring your left elbow towards the outside of your front knee. So you're twisting in towards your front leg. And your elbow may or may not come. That's okay. You want to protect your spine. It should feel good, not crunchy. And just like you did with your first twist, think about lengthening the spine on your inhales. The crown of your head is reaching out, up. And then on your exhale, you're maybe dropping into the twist deeper if that's what your body wants. And you can always bring a forearm or a hand down to your front thigh for stability. I usually tuck my back toes to help me balance. Take one more breath here. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, drop into the fullest expression of this twist for you. And then come back to center, lifting your torso again. And bring both hands to the inside of your front foot. Scoot your front foot forward to the top corner of your mat and come into a runner's lunge. You might want to readjust your back knee, or if this is a little hard on your knee, you can put a blanket or a towel, some kind of padding under there. And decide what you want to do with your runner's lunge. You can stay here. You can come down to your forearms. And if you do want to roll out onto the knife edge of that foot, just make sure that your ankle still stays in line with your knee to protect your joints. Find your version of runner's lunge. And take a few more breaths here. If you've got a block or props that you're using, you can gently move them out of the way. Bring your hands under your shoulders and press your weight back towards your back knee. And you can toe heel that front foot back until it's between your hands again. And if you want to, from here, you can straighten your front leg, flexing your foot, pointing the toes towards the ceiling, and take a little hamstring stretch to counter your runner stretch. And I usually stay pretty lifted, but if your hamstrings are a little more flexible right now, you can sit back on your back heel. So kind of find the pose that works for you here. And come back to your lunge. We're going to switch sides. So send the front foot back and shake it out, stretch it out. Maybe make little hip circles or big hip circles in both directions before coming back to your tabletop. And inhale your left leg up behind you. Exhale, lunge it through. And if you want to lift that back knee and come into a crescent, you can, or you can keep the knee down for kneeling crescent. When you have your balance, rise on up. And think about keeping your hips even. So if you find your right hip is drawing back and your hips are kind of twisted, see if you can pull your right hip forward and your left hip back so that they're both level in line, both pointing forward. And from here, bring your hands to heart center. Lead with your heart as you reach over your front leg and start to move into your revolved crescent, bringing your right elbow towards the outside of your left leg. But let your breath guide you. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, twist. Always have the option to set an arm or a forearm down on that thigh. Take one more breath. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, twist. And then come back to center. Reach your arms up overhead. And bring both hands down to the inside of your front foot. Scoot your front foot up to the top left corner of your mat. Set yourself up for runner's lunge on this side. So you can adjust your knee, put some padding under there. If you want a block or a blanket up under your hands, you can do that. You can come down to your forearms or fully collapse down to the mat. And it's important to check in with this side of your body because our sides are not always the same. We're not always exactly symmetrical. In fact, we rarely are. So if you want to do something a little bit different on this side, you can. You know, maybe you want to come down a little deeper. Maybe you do want to roll out onto the knife edge of your foot. And maybe this side, you want to change up the intensity and not go as deep. So listen to what your body wants as you take your time in this runner's lunge. I'm going to go turn off my heater. If you're using a block or a blanket under your hands, start to move those props out of the way. Bring your hands under your shoulders and start to shift your weight back into your back leg. At the same time, if you want to straighten that front leg and flex your foot to get that hamstring stretch, you can. Depending on where your hamstrings are at, you've got the option to sit back on your back heel or you can stay lifted. Whatever feels best to you. And from here, you can return to your lunge if you want to bring your hands back down to the mat. Send your front foot back, shake it out, stretch it out. Maybe make some hip circles. And then once you're back in your tabletop, tuck your back toes. Well, hopefully the only toes that you have are on the back. And tuck your toes and sit back onto your heels. We're moving into a toe stretch. So that you can see, it doesn't look like much, but it can feel like a lot. Especially depending on how much walking and standing that you do. And from toe stretch, shift your weight forward again. So you're coming back into tabletop. Release the toes and hammer out the feet, the tops of your feet against the mat. Really get some percussion going. So you're getting blood flow back into your toes, relaxing out some of the tension. Also probably making your neighbors wonder what on earth is going on. And then to come into seated from your tabletop, I usually just cross my ankles, sit back, and bring my legs through out in front of me. But you can come to seated however you want. And we'll do kind of like a seated forward fold, but with one leg at a time. So almost like you're coming into tree pose. Extend your left leg out long in front of you, foot flexed, toes pointing towards the ceiling. And then bring your right foot to the inside of your left leg. And you can really place that foot wherever you want as long as it's not right against the knee joint. So either above or below. And you might have to move some fluff and stuff out from under you. If you want to stay here, you can stay here. If you like to fold over your straight leg, reach your arms up overhead, hinge from the hips. So you're hinging from here instead of rounding your back and reaching for your toes. Lead with your heart, hinge at your hips. And when you can't reach any farther with a flat back, then you can release your hands and relax your head and neck. And if you want to make this into a more restorative pose, one of my favorite things to do is to use a yoga block, but you can use other things that you have around you. And I build myself a little block tower and I give my head a place to rest. If you're folded over your extended leg, take your time lifting your torso back up. Maybe you even walk your fingertips back towards your body, pressing some weight into them so that that's what's lifting you up again. Extend both legs so that you can take any movement you need, maybe windshield wipering the feet or jiggling them out a little bit. And then keeping your right leg extended, draw your left foot in to the inside of that leg. Place it where you want, keeping in mind it might be different on this side. And your choice, if you want to stay sitting up nice and tall, lifting up through the crown of the head. If you're getting sensation there, you can stay there. If you like a different intensity, you can reach your arms up overhead, hinge from your hips, lead with your heart as you fold forward. When you can't fold anymore, stop, release your hands, release your head and neck. slowly start to come back up to seated, moving aside whatever props you're using fingertips to press yourself back up. Extend both legs, shake them out, jiggle them out. And we'll make our way onto our back. So you can do that however you want to. The way I like to do it is knees bent, hands behind my thighs, rounding the back and rolling down and letting the legs come up into my chest. And once you're on your back, extend your left leg down along the mat and bring your right knee into your chest. Give it a little hug. And then gently draw that knee across your body. And there's no need to press down on the knee, just let gravity do its work. And you can tee out your arms or have them in cactus arms. Bring your right knee back up to center and give it one more hug. Release it to slide down the length of the mat. And then switch sides, drawing your left knee in. Giving it a good hug before you bring it over to your right side. Bring your left knee back to center. Bring your right knee up to meet it. Hug both knees into your chest, really, really tight. Maybe you bring your forehead up towards your knees as well. And then release everything, letting one leg and then the other slide down to the mat. And maybe you want to take one big good morning stretch before your final Shavasana, reaching your arms up overhead, pointing your toes, getting out any yawns. Sorry if I made you yawn. I know it's contagious. And then relax everything and find the pose that you want to spend your final Shavasana in. You can stay here, letting your feet fall out to the sides, hands relaxing down by your sides. Or you can bend your knees with your feet flat on the mat and your knees knocked together if that feels better on your low back. If you want to, you can place a hand or both hands on your belly if you like to feel the rise and fall of your breath. And once you find your Shavasana pose, let your arms and your legs start to feel heavy. You can feel the places where your skin or your clothing is connected to the ground. And as everything starts to feel heavy and relaxed, if you notice areas that are still tight, that are still tense, inhale light and breath into those places. As you exhale, let that tension melt away and let it be absorbed by the earth. This is your time to rest, to reset, to thank your body for the hard work that it does and for bringing you through this yoga practice today. If you set aside an hour for your class today, then there's 6 minutes of that hour remaining for Shavasana. If you have more time than that, please feel free, spend as much time in Shavasana as you want. But I'll close class here saying thank you for doing yoga today, for coming onto your mat and making that choice. It's always a pleasure. The light in me sees, honors, and reflects the light in you. Namaste.